Hello there, welcome to episode 51 of Never Mind the Bullens. My name's Mike Peters, this is your bite-sized Everton podcast and vodcast. Recording this obviously after the Spurs draw at Goodison on Friday night. I mentioned in episode 50, the one with added echo, which sounded like I'd recorded it in Nebworth. I'm so sorry for that. That's just me knocking a button over there on the desk that had the effects on. Fool. I've checked it now, we should be fine. All good. I mentioned that obviously, that we should be able to put in a much better performance against Spurs on the basis that it was Carlo had suggested that we would have bodies back in the squad and in the starting 11. Obviously, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, not one of them, but we had plenty of others, particularly midfield, obviously, which is where we were really short. And Alan just absolutely crucial to the whole thing and made a massive difference. It allowed Gylfi Sigurdsson and James to be much more proactive in attacking areas, even though James had worked brilliantly on Monday night. And it just allowed us to be a much more threatening team against Tottenham, which was really pleasing to see. We were much the better side. Tottenham are a curious mix, aren't they? They really are. The squad that they've got, and we've always measured ourselves against them, I think, sort of subconsciously, in terms of as we've sort of gone toe-to-toe over the years, in terms of where we should be and where they're at. They've had huge levels of investment. I mean, so have we. But we've really squandered it. We haven't had that in the last few years, but they've steadily built, Pochettino, had Harry Redknapp before that one. They've been right banging on the door of the Champions League. They've been in it a few times. So even though we've measured ourselves against them, their success has been a bit more tangible. Their progression seems to have been more, but equally they seem to have stalled. They seem to have stagnated a little bit. And we seem to be really coming up on their heels after a period where that gap between the two clubs had really become very marked, and we'd struggled to get a result against them. They were consistently challenging, probably should have won the league a couple of years back in 2016 when Leicester won it. They've had opportunities to win the league and they've just not quite grasped that in the same way that we haven't grasped opportunities to, as we discussed before, getting in the top four, etc., winning trophies down the years as well. But we were the better side last night, and it's really pleasing that we've managed to score 7 goals against them in the 2 games at Goodison this season. Obviously beat them on the opening weekend at their place, and that's the really pleasing aspect. But of course the frustration, and we know this is a transitional season, but last night was sort of Everton encapsulated in this season really, where lots of attacking threat. We've created really good chances at times. And then we've cost ourselves with just silly mistakes, whether it be poor finishing, which has happened before. And there was an element of that last night. The great chance that Richarlison had, 8 minutes of time. Josh, obviously, really good move. We're attacking with plenty of numbers. Got into the box, attacking with pace, playing well. Josh King has a decent chance, saved by Lloris. And then Richarlison blazes it over from 15 yards when he's a player of his quality. Should be finishing that off, and you just knew that was kind of, you just kind of sensed that that's not going to be our night when we're missing big chances like that. But again, defensively, obviously 2 massive lapses. Mason Holgate and Michael Keane doing an absolutely spot-on impression of the Chuckle Brothers. It was Keystone Cop stuff at times. I mean, I'd be the type of stuff I'd expect to see on the Joe Stone Memorial Ground. On Long Lane on a Sunday morning. It's that type of stuff from an under-9s team that was so poor. And I sat and watched the other day the lengthy piece that Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher had done on Monday Night Football the other week, which had a lot of people talking about their squads for Euro 2020. And I was like, well, why is Michael Keane not in there? I felt he's been excellent this season, but I'm thinking last night proved probably why they were right and why they're very highly paid pundits, and I'm sat here doing this for nothing. But anyway, other than love, of course. But that kind of proved it. The first one tries to stretch with the header, doesn't get there. Mason Holgate, I mean, I've mentioned him several times this season because I don't think he's been anywhere near the player he was certainly last season, and he's just, that injury that he had, where he's had periods out of the team, has really seemed to have knocked his form, and he's never really got it back. He's been desperately trying. He's had a couple of really good performances in fits and starts here, but overall, I think he's been very disappointing this season. And hopefully he'll bounce back and kick on again next season. I have no doubts about that whatsoever. But those lapses have cost us massively. And if you're a team that has pretensions of and ambitions of being in the Champions League, in that mix, which we have been for 30 odd games now, you can't afford to do that, particularly when you've got world-class strikers like Harry Kane, who's absolutely lethal against us. You know, he is the new Les Ferdinand in that regard, in terms of he scores every blinking time he plays us. Quite glad I had him as my fantasy team captain now, but you can't make those mistakes really against any team, but against the top teams and with the world-class finishes, you are going to get punished, and it's a lesson that we need to learn really, really quickly. I must mention Alex Iwobi, because I'd mentioned him slightly facetiously, and he's been a recurring theme, I think, for every Evertonian, and certainly has on this podcast this season. It's sort of like where you're thinking, finally, he cracked it sort of just before Christmas, and he was getting into a bit of a run of form, and was starting to put in some really good performances, scored that cracking goal at Wolves and all the rest of it. And then his form's just dropped off completely again. He's not been in the team. He was expected to come on, had a great chance to win the game, actually, that he created on Monday night. But last night, he was just desperate. And I think the whole thing was encapsulated. If you go back and want to rewatch the whole game, just into the second half, about 5 or 6 minutes into the second half, Richarlison has the ball, and there's about 5 or 6 Spurs players in front of him, between him and the goal, and he's forced wide out to the right hand side, and Alex Iwobi stood no more than 10 yards from him, completely free, nobody marking him, and he's saying, give me the ball, and on the face of it you're thinking, well, you pass the man that's not covered, and Richarlison just wouldn't give him the ball. He just kept going and turned back inside and eventually gave the ball to another Everton player. I forget who it was. And I just thought that absolutely encapsulates where Alex Iwobi is at with regards to the rest of his teammates, because it clearly, certainly Richarlison doesn't appear to trust him. You don't think he get the end product. And Richarlison's point was absolutely borne out in that same move, where the ball was worked out to the left-hand side and then was played back across to Iwobi, and he went straight to the first, tried to get the ball in, cleared, didn't even make past the first man. And I thought, that's it. And then he's taken off. After an hour, Seamus Coleman comes on, and within 30 seconds, he has done more in that period of time than Alex Iwobi done in the previous hour. Created the goal, lovely play, great goal from Gylfi Sigurdsson, a really lovely team goal. And I just thought, right, I just think with him, we're never going to get that. That was an absolute pup that we bought there, and we're going to just have to cut our losses and flog him for whatever we can, because that was a huge outlay of money, and he's just not sort of, I wouldn't say flattered to deceive, he's just deceived. What we thought we were getting, we've clearly not got, and that's cost us literally in terms of financially and in terms of his ability, because we've just had him as a passenger far too many times when he's been on the pitch. Where we are in terms of the league position, we're starting to run out of games here in terms of what to achieve something this season, and this just has the hallmarks of an Everton season where it's promised so much and then ended up in a bit of a damp squib. We've got 7 games to go now, 7 games to go, and you're just thinking to yourself, right, what can we achieve? We've got to very quickly now, with a limited run of games, turn this around and get ourselves back into some semblance of form. We've not won in 6, which is the first time that we've had that poor run of results since December 2018, since Marco Silva's first season. And if you're taking 3 points out of 15, that's just simply not good enough if you want to get into the European positions. There's an argument to be made, and I've made it on this podcast before. I've made it to friends, I've made it on this podcast. But we're in seasons where you're thinking, actually, do we want to get into the Europa League? It's almost it's Champions League or nothing, because the Europa League knocks you so much. It's like, do we really want to get into that sort of mix when we're still trying to move a few players out, bring other quality players in? Is that where we want to be? Who knows? But we've got a chance to try and get ourselves back on track with at a ground where we've never won. I haven't won away at Arsenal since the mid-90s. Next Friday, and obviously they're again very fitful this season, a transitional season for them. And you just think, well, this is Everton. We can absolutely go there and get a result. Our away from form's been very good. Will it happen? Remains to be seen. So lots to ponder over the next week. It'd be good to get your thoughts, as always, at NMTVPod on Twitter, nmtvpod@gmail.com. This has been a Top Content production, and until the next time, come on you Blues.